because some would look at this and say, absolutely, this is what I want. And some would be terrified. If it's terrifying and you don't want it, then you don't want God to lead you to it, because this is His values for marriage. And He's going to lead you in that, and He's going to always be pressing on you to grow in these areas. In good ways. God doesn't force you to do anything you don't want to do, but He will definitely keep talking to you about these things. And the better you can do these things, the better your marriage is going to be. At least the way that He designs it. Have anything else on this one? And that's the verse. Jesus said, hey, if you want to do things my way, make sure you do count the cost. Before, I was not ready to be all of those things before we got married. I did not know about all of those things before we got married. But I did have the potential to be ready for those things. And I believe God saw that. He was growing me, and He knew that, because He cared about Claire, and He didn't want to connect her up with someone who was going to derail her life. So He had to make sure. And He took me through some stuff before I ever met her to make sure that I'd be a good fit for her. To at least I had grown enough when we got married that I could keep growing into those things when we were married. And that's most of us in one way or another. That is the idea. So is anybody scared of that, by the way? Is that terrifying, that picture of marriage? Okay. Yeah, good. I thought it was good, but some people are pretty afraid of it. Mm-hmm. Here are the steps. We're going to kind of start talking through them. And what we're going to do is give a testament of our own life. We're going to tell some stories here and ask some questions to see what you think. There are 5 steps, except I had a 6th one. I wasn't even ready for step 1. I had to admit something else first. I had to admit at a time in my life that the way I was doing things was not working. It was not working for me. It was not working for the people around me. Because if I really did care about people, I was not being a very good influence on people. And I had to let God change me. It was hard. Because I learned that when I was, I suppose 21, 22 years old. Right in that prime dating time, I ended up taking time out of dating on purpose. And my roommate and my friends thought I was crazy for doing that. And I'll tell you, I thought so too for a while. Because it was really difficult to sit at home on a Saturday night when I didn't have to. And when they were out. We'll talk about that. But that's the first thing. I had to get to a place where in order to be what God wanted me to be, I had to stop. I had friends who tried to follow some of these principles, some of those steps for a week or two and said, well, that's not working. I had to follow them for 3 years before I met Claire. That was really hard when nobody else around me was doing that. But God needed that to happen. I heard one time somebody said, why did Moses have to wait 40 years before God would bring him back to lead the people out of Egypt? And the answer was, well, I guess God knew He couldn't do it in 39. I had to wait 3 years to be ready to start interacting with Claire in a way that would be good for her. Here's my story. I had a crash. I started dating when I was 15 years old. My parents had split up when I was 5. My dad left, and he said, I don't want you. I don't want your mom. I want to go be a rock star. And that happened. I only talked to him twice in my life. Both were at funerals for 2 minutes. So he really did leave with no interest at all. My first sight of what a marriage and family was is somebody abandoning people. And that put something in me that is really going to come out when we go into the second part about how hard it was to actually be married when that's what you experienced. And I was alone. My mom worked a lot. She worked day and night just to put food on the table. We lived in a trailer, and it was all she could do to feed us from the time I was 5 to about 12. So I was alone. I was a latchkey kid, nobody around. She met another person when I was 12 and they got married, but he didn't know how to be a dad and he had some violent issues. We didn't have a relationship and pretty much they didn't pay attention to me, to the point that even in high school, when I was a high school senior and I was a soloist trumpet player in the marching band, they never ever saw me play. That was what our relationship was. I needed affection and I felt like I needed somebody to care, and it turned out you can get that in dates if you're a nice person and you meet nice people. And what I did is I started a process of taking relationships in high school too seriously emotionally, I would say, going way too all in. I was that person who would disappear from my friends for months, while you're dating the new person, because this is your whole life now. Way too seriously emotionally, not seriously enough physically. In high school, that part of it was not across a line too bad, but in college, I ended up taking that too far too. That's from 15 to 22, I'm going down this cycle. I had given Jesus my life at 11 years old because my great-grandfather told me who he was. I didn't really know much about it, but I am a testament that if you do, he doesn't let you go. Because what happened is I'm sowing these seeds of things that are really not the kind of values that he'd want me to have. I've got no moorings, but he keeps talking to me. And I'm getting more and more sad as I'm doing stuff that looks to the people around me like it's great. And about 22 years old, I hit a crash. I had an internship at IBM, I think at that time it was starting, somewhere around there. Good car. I was head of a fraternity, had lots of friends and everything, and I was dead inside because I knew that there was something really wrong with me. I wanted to go be a husband one day, and this couldn't be the right way toward that. What happened is I hit a crash one night at a party, and it was snowing, and that's why this picture. I went to this party, friends in my fraternity, and it was a co-ed party, and they had a Jenga game. While I had allowed myself to take my relationships too seriously, I never was flippant about them, and I didn't want to use people. They had this game. Do you know what Jenga is? The block game where you pull blocks out? Anybody play that? Okay. Well, they wrote sexual things on the bottom of the blocks, and it was going to be a game. And everybody was sitting around, and you pull the block out, and you got to do that with the person next to you. I had never seen these people do this before. This is a shock. Maybe they had when I wasn't around, but I didn't know. I just felt like I got to get out of here because I had this voice that hit me. It was the best thing I can describe it as is, said, Robin, if you do this, you are lost to me. Not that anybody might be, but you will be, because you will not recover from this. You have got to get out of here. So I went upstairs. This girl followed me upstairs and said, hey, are you okay? I said, yeah, I just got to get out of there. And she said, okay, well, why don't we just fool around up here? What? I can't believe this is happening. I ran down the stairs, out the door, and I'm standing there in the snow. All of my friends are behind me. And I realize I have to leave everybody I know, or else I'm lost. And it's not that they're bad people. We are bad for each other. And I don't know what to do. And that's what I did. I went home, got on my knees, and I said, Lord, I'm not the person you wanted me to be. I certainly am not the person my grandfather believed in. Do whatever you have to do. Take anything away you have to take away. I got to give myself to you now. And that was the start of me giving myself to God. Her story is less dramatic, but why don't you tell your
He's the dramatic one in the family.
Yeah.
I didn't have as much the zero, admit, whatever it is, he wrote the thing. Yeah, the zero step. But I grew up in church. I have parents. They were married happily until my mom passed away. And as I said, an abnormally normal childhood. I grew up actually at this church, coming to this church my entire life. Mm-hmm. And I kind of claimed in high school, they're teaching you about dating and everything. The verse, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what I was thinking with my dating life. And I knew someday, I wanted to get married and have a family and all the things like I'd experienced as a child. And but I didn't really date a lot in high school. And in college, I kind of shot myself in the foot with dating a lot in college because I went to a school in which the male-to-female ratio was like, I don't know, one guy for every 6 girls, so it wasn't easy to find a date. And then I graduated and I moved back home, And I didn't have any friends around here. They'd all gone, and I'd lost touch with everybody, and I was lonely. I didn't have any way to connect to young people. So I started, trying to find places to meet people. I had a job, so I met some people at work, and then I would go out to some bars and meet people at bars, and then I met some people at church, and I went out with some various people, and some of them were nice guys, some of them were they weren't anything horrible, and none of them were serious relationships. And I'm like, at some point I was like, this isn't what I want. I'm looking for the desire of my heart, but I'm just going out with whomever, trying to find companionship, and I'm not really delighting myself in the Lord. So when I recognized that, and I wanted to stop playing around with dating, I did what he did, and I took a break from dating. Now mine was like a month.
Right.
His was the 3 years. Just different.
Well, she had less work
scale.
to do.
Yeah. I was like actually going out with someone from the church, and I had to give him the friend talk. Let's just be friends. Friend zone him. But yes.
We're realizing that we need to offer something to God. There's a lot in the Bible about that. The Bible is a lot about you don't need strategies, you need me. Romans 12:1. I used to wonder, what does this mean? I got it in this moment. Renew your heart and mind and will to know mine for you. And that's where I was. I had to empty myself of everything I had learned to figure out what in the world God might want to lead me to. And the second one is Joshua 1:8. Moses had led all the people toward the promised land, and now he's dying, and Joshua's taken over, and he's got to actually go invade. So he's thinking about, what strategies do I need? I'm not much of a soldier. Let's make our war plans and everything. And God said, there's a famous verse that says, have courage, I, your God, am with you. That's Joshua 1:9. It's right after this. And this is what he said before that. You don't have to have a strategy. Just obey my word. Don't go to the left or right from it, and you will be successful. In other words, just read your Bible daily and do what it says to do. Treat people the way that it asks you to treat people. Talk to me. Listen to what I'm saying in your heart and do that, and you're going to be okay. You don't have to have a book that tells you. And that's why I said we're presenting this as steps, but it's really our history. The history of learning to do that. And then Matthew 6:33, Jesus said, here's the secret to living in a relationship with me. All the way up to this whole chapter, Jesus says, the people all around you are pursuing cars, they're pursuing fame, they're pursuing stuff. You forget it. Pursue me. I know what you need. I didn't even know what kind of girl I needed back to marriage. God did. But in order for me to be receptive to it, I had to just start pursuing him instead of what I thought was the right next thing to do. That's what I did. I did not know these verses at the time, by the way. I just knew, this is not working, you take it. And he began to teach me some of these things. And that's where I was, beginning to offer myself. But it was hard. I had a lonely time growing in those 3 years. I had not gone 3 months without dating somebody since I was 15 years old. And now I'm going 3 years. And I didn't have to. And there were people around. And it was really difficult. And I was very tempted. But I had to totally change how I was in order to be right for someone, I thought. I was a nice person and all. Like I say, I wasn't trying to use anybody. I just didn't know what I was doing. And we're leading each other into things that are hurting each other and stuff. I had a string of relationships that started off great, and then a lot of hurt would happen because we didn't know what we were doing. I didn't want to hurt anybody else. That's what it came down to. I offered myself to God. I had to find out this question. Who am I when I'm not in the context of dating somebody else? I didn't know. That's the only thing I knew is I'm with this person, I'm that couple. I'm in this fraternity, I'm that person. I have no idea who just I am. Really, it turns out you have to find out whose you are. You're God's, and who is he to you? That will help you to be more confident. By the time I met Claire, I was a much healthier person. If we hadn't gotten together, I would have been okay. I'm glad we did, but I would have been okay if we didn't. I was okay on my own by the time I got with her. I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
No, I think it does. And I think it leads into what we were going to talk about in a minute with step number 3 too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the main thing that you need to consider in this is pursuing God first. Mm-hmm. And allowing God to shape you. and discovering your identity in Christ.
Here's a heavy part of what we're going to talk about tonight is during this time, letting God shape us into who he wants us to be. That's these verses here. If we're going to be God's children, then allow him to lead us. And what Claire said, begin to think about taking our delight in him and really believe in him. When he says, I got you, I know what you need, I have your future, just believe me. My roommate thought I was a complete idiot for doing this and told me to my face, you are the biggest idiot I know. I can't believe it. Until I got married.
Right? You still said you were an idiot even when you got married.
And well, until I'm still married 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later. He finally got married 20 years later. It caught him some time, but he really did. He thought I was crazy. But what was happening is God knows where he's going with things. He has in mind the places you're going and the people you're going to meet. And the journey is not just about you. That's what I didn't know at the time, but I started learning. Before I met Claire, God knew what she was going to need. And he began to work on me the things that would be good for her before we met each other. That's what is happening in this time.
And something that went into that too, just to maybe step back for a second, is while he's preparing himself and working on his relationship with God, my parents prayed for him from the time I was little, and I prayed for him. Wasn't always as consistently maybe as it should be, but I started praying in high school for who I was going to marry, and then when I started to refocus my attention on not so much dating but on my relationship with God, I turned that over to him as well, and started praying, Lord, if there is someone out there, if you have this plan for me, then be with this person, make them into the man that you have designed them to be, and just praying for his future and his welfare. We do the same thing for our children and for their future mate.
Every person who you know has fears, they have needs, they have values, stuff that's important to them. I didn't know what they were for Claire. And I didn't really grasp what they were for anybody who I was friends with or dated at the time, and neither did they with me. But that's the relationship, investing into those things and being willing to be a partner in those things. And so God had to start shaping me toward those things. Do you know the story of the little red hen? You ever heard this story? You do? Okay, could you repeat it? Can you say it without looking? Okay.
You can't tell the story.
Okay,
That's
anybody?
okay.
Do you know the story? Anybody in the room? The little red hen?
Red hen. Anybody?
Okay.
We read it to our kids. My parents read it to me.
Okay. I wanted to be married. Yeah. That's the goal. I'd like to be married one day and have children and everything. I wasn't even thinking that I'd have to do work in the marriage. I'm just looking at the benefits. Have you met anybody like that? Oh, being married is going to be great because of this, that, and the other. In fact, everybody here would like to be married again. What's something you're looking forward to? Anybody willing to say? Marriage is good. There's good stuff. Anything out there in the room or on this? Companionship. Excellent. Yeah, yes. To not be alone, have someone there. Yeah, what else? Anything else in the room?
The encouragement.
Security, encouragement.
Sure.
Yes, they're wonderful things. I'm all about that. I wasn't thinking about me providing that to somebody else, too. And that's what God was working on me.
Do y'all find that? Usually you're thinking about whatever it is, what do I need?
So the little red hen is a story about the little hen, and she's making some bread. And so she goes out and starts by growing the corn. She asks everybody, like it's a cat, was it a bull and a cat and a rat? And she says, who will help me water the corn? The bull says, not I. And the cat says, not I. And the rat says, not I. And then she begins to water the corn. And then she says, okay, well, who will help me bake the bread and all the steps into making the bread? And well, not I, not I, not I. And then she says, well, who will help me eat the bread? And they said, I will. Me. Everyone says, I will. Well, the stuff we want is the bread of marriage. And we are the bread for the other person, which means we have to make the bread. We have to do stuff in that marriage. There's stuff that we're maybe even not wanting to be part of the marriage, that we got to do our part. Relational needs is an area where this comes up. Every person on earth has emotional needs that can only be met through another person.
It's the way God designed it.
It's the way God designed it.
To need Him and to need each other.
Right. In your friendships, it's that way. You never outgrow it. I wish to say that you do, but you don't. It's multicultural. You can talk to anybody on earth, and they'll say, yep, I see myself in one of these things. This makes sense. To be accepted, to be approved by someone, for someone to have compassion for you, encouragement. We even said that. Security is right there. All those things we need. It means different things to each of us. Mm-hmm. And that's the challenge for marriage. Usually 2 or 3 will really jump out to each person and say, I need all of these, but these are big. And they're usually going to be dependent on your experiences, what you grew up in. I had abandonment. Security was my number one need when we got married because I was terrified of abandonment. I didn't know I was, but I was. That led to a really hard first year in our marriage. I had that need and I couldn't have articulated it. But thank goodness God knew and he gave me someone who could deal with that. I basically bluffed to divorce a lot the first year of our marriage. Let me just say it that way. I didn't want to, but I was so scared she'd leave me that I thought, well, I'm going to do what I always do. When I get scared enough, I'm going to end this relationship. And she did something that stopped that forever, and we're going to talk about that next time. It was only because God knew that that was a big need in my life, and he gave me someone who was ready to meet that need. He is planning ahead and building into you something that you're going to need. Let me ask a question. You saw 2 or 3 of those probably that stood out to you, that you thought are a big deal? Let me go back to it. Anybody would be willing to say 2 or 3 of these are kind of a bigger deal to you than others in what they are?
Affection and respect.
Affection and respect.
Affection. Anybody else?
And affection, yep.
I know respect is a big one for me. Support.
Attention.
Attention, yeah. He likes attention.
I do like attention. I do not like being on the outer perimeter of anything. Yeah. I want to be in the middle. Even if I'm messing up, I want to be in the middle. Yeah, and I think it's because I never got any. I think that's what it was. You've got 3, so we can all agree that we're needy people. I guess that's the bottom line. We're needy. Have you ever heard anyone say you should not marry a needy person? I don't know if the ladies groups say that. Men groups say that all the time. Don't get yourself a needy woman. Like, yeah, well, you're a needy guy. You're just as needy as they are. And the good thing is, if they didn't need anything, they wouldn't need you. And it's important to keep that in mind because there are some ways in which Claire has some of those needs to be met that I'm really comfortable with because I like that too. In some ways that I would have never thought of doing that in that way. But it's important to her. And so I want to serve her in our marriage. That second pillar is serve one another. There are ways in which she needs support that do not look like the way that I need support, even though support is a big need for both of us. I learned that lesson one time when we were painting I wasn't planning on telling this, but this is short and it's neat. We were painting a wall one day in our first house. I was a project manager at the time for an IT company. So I know how to delegate stuff. We were painting 2 rooms. What we're going to do is I'm going to take this room and you take that room. It's on a Saturday and we'll get done all day and then we'll have a date Saturday night. We'll get done a lot faster. We can get on our days sooner. And I did that a lot of times when we would do household things. I'm wanting to get to our date. And then Claire would have a really bad time on our date and I would have a bad time after the date because she had a bad time on the date and it was just a bad date and I couldn't figure it out. And I don't remember how it came out. But somewhere along the line, I learned that what she really wanted is for us to both be in the same room, painting the same wall, so we could be having a date while we're painting. That's what support looked like to her.
Yeah, we're spending time together, doing things together.
Well, that was not my way of things. But I had to learn to begin to appreciate that for her. And then I did learn. It was nice. We're talking. We actually are having a date while we're doing a chore. But that would have never occurred to me.
We still got it done.
Yeah, we still got it done, right. So that's an example. He's leading you toward that.